the whole thing started in our Studio 13, which is this really small place on a kind of industrial complex near where I live, and it's just a brilliant place to work because of this small businesses and you know, studios. There's no sort of big artists there or anything, so it's a nice vibe there. And we just in end of the summer we just went in there with William, just really recorded everything, and I sort of played the songs really for the first time to everyone, my demos, and they just reacted off that. And then we had DAT players recording all the time and getting things into William's Pro Tools, and just there was no order to it. It was completely chaotic, and it's whatever. Any day there was no right, we're going to finish this off. It was like, oh, this is something new, let's just do that. And he just took back, you know, hours and hours and hours of sort of half-finished songs, jams, ideas, and we just started to put the thing together in another studio. So it was completely different. I mean, usually we've always, at least to a greater extent, just worked out a song and then gone in there and played it pretty much how we'd worked it out, you know. Sounded a lot more like how we've always sounded when we've been rehearsing and doing demos.
The way that we've always worked, you know, Damon will come along with a sort of noodle and a hum, and we'll all try and make it into our song. The best songs, it's always, you know, the four of us all doing our thing in our own corner, sounding nice together. I think we do play well together as a band. Well, basically what we did is every day for a month went into the studio at lunchtime and just bashed a song out and did a song a day, and then it all went into computers. There's been amazing developments in recording technology over the last year or so. Systems like Pro Tools just completely revolutionised the way music's recorded. It's ridiculous what you can do with pieces of sound. You know, it makes it a lot easier to make records, basically.
I saw an interview with Madonna, and she expressed this as well, that it's kind of like making a film, and there's these scenes, and you don't really know what they mean. You just know how to do the scenes because you know how to play your instrument, and you're kind of bouncing off each other or whatever musically. But it's only really toward the end you actually get the gist of the whole picture or whatever. So it's like going to the premiere, it's like the mixing or something, and you sort of see what's happening.
It was a lot more fun, really. Making records has tended to be very satisfying, but not much fun for me, because everything's been extremely structured. I suppose there hasn't been that much room for improvisation. We've tended to know pretty much what we were doing before we went in. This was a much less structured session. We kind of went in with the loosest of ideas, really kind of figured things out on the fly. And even then, you know, the creative process didn't finish, but, you know, when we put our instruments down, we'd still ended up with a sequence of jams and kind of ideas that needed editing into place afterwards. So yeah, it's quite a different way of working, really. I played less but better, I think. Yeah, I definitely felt less under pressure. So I think that paid dividends for me. So I didn't kind of splurge everything down onto tape, but it's a lot more selective as what I did.
I would always approach working with a new man, a producer or something, with some trepidation, I guess, because I kind of believe in the better the devil you know sort of thing, which is probably a little unadventurous. But actually I was very excited as well, because I had no idea how he would work, but I liked the idea of crossing, of a kind of a crossbreed of techno and a kind of really heavy music like I've been interested in recently, sort of and kind of creating a death metal sort of techno sort of thing. I thought that might be quite interesting. And with someone like William Orbit's background, I knew that might be, he's obviously kind of crazy about stuff that rocks or stuff that's extreme or something that's kind of... I knew he'd have a kind of perverseness about his attitude to music, which I think I have. And actually working with him, it was very different from Stephen Street, I guess, because I think he only told me to tune my guitar twice, which I really liked, because I always used to scare Stephen and say, I'm going to tune my guitar once at the beginning of recording and that's it. And then whatever happens to it after that, that's what happens. But with him, he left it up to me. So he kind of beat me in that way. He beat me and I would... tune my guitar, but I was quite involved in the mixing because I think William wanted me around quite a lot during the mixing. He seems genuinely interested in your comments and very sympathetic. He kind of seemed less of a grown-up. He seemed more like an 8-year-old in an adult's body kind of thing. He seemed very excited about everything, very excited about ridiculous sounds and he just had fun. You could really tell that he was having fun. It's like when we did early shows years and years ago, that the in-house engineers would hate me because they thought I was a little upstart who just wanted to make a lot of noise and be the loudest or something like that, but it's not particularly true, and I just don't think they really understood what I was getting at. But William did, because he has the same perverse outlook. I like extremes, especially musically.
I mean, Stephen was great. Stephen Street, who we've done most of the other records with, is an absolutely genius producer, but he does tend to work in a very structured way. And that's really the only way we've ever worked in the past. So, we had no idea how to work in the other way. So when William came along, we just said, just do whatever you want, it'll be fine. And just kind of set the tape rolling, and just kind of mopped up ideas as they happen.
Well, the big thing about this record was having a new producer, which makes you quite apprehensive, I think. We'd had a long relationship with Stephen Street and, developed a lot of trust and understanding, and that kind of... In a studio, you just need a producer who can get the best out of you or whatever. So, it was just like lots of walls were knocked down and it was just innate. Having somebody new there meant that it was kind of like a clean sheet, there was no... it came together with William really well. I was really surprised Graham was up for it, really, because basically he's been making Euro disco music for the last 10 years, and that's my bag, but I never thought it was Graham, but he really understands guitars, so there's kind of sonic depths on this record that, sonic sandwich.
A couple of things. He did some remixes for us off his own back. He just sort of said, because he knew Andy Ross from Food Records, and he really took the initiative himself. And when we heard them, they were very different. They'd picked up on something which we hadn't, which we felt was a kind of important part of what we do. But no one really who's done remixes in the past had sort of even grasped that idea, and that's the sense that all the rhythms we have, if you just take a little bit of them and you loop them up, they turn into very sort of lopsided, weird tangents, and he just took a lot of the songs and took those elements and really accentuated them, and just thought, well, this is the man to give us the space which we, have so need and, really, really been trying to find. The songs I'd written just really felt like nothing else I'd ever written before, and it just made perfect sense to me because I felt there was a big change that was happening. To go with someone you know, who in some ways could completely screw up what we'd done or turn it into something very different. You know, it could have gone either way. Really, there was no guarantee of you know, the finished article. You know, the more I sing something, the worse it gets. Not when I'm playing live, but in the recording process, because you know, you live or die by the spontaneity of the sound, and it keeps it very spontaneous.
Mostly, we had songs, but it was mostly improvised and then tidied up, really. So we could do anything. I think some of it will be a challenge, but I think it's so great to listen to. It's there's so much happening, but it's very selective at the same time. There's nothing that isn't really needed on there sound-wise. It's creating when it's chaotic, it needs to be. And when it's, you know, there are several moments of just white, you know, pretty horrible noise, but it's essential still. So I think listening to it is quite an experience. But I mean, and the only way I can get to do that is just to listen to it through other people. I've just had some visitors, and I was playing them it, and listening to their reactions and things like that. But I can't actually experience it in that way myself, properly. Yeah, it's like definitely a bit of a headphones record. It'll be a challenge, but a nice one. It's not going to be like a struggle, I don't think.
We've always said, you know, that you've got to let the song speak for itself, you know. You've got to kind of follow what the song wants to do. It sounds a bit weird, but I don't know why we've always said that. But yeah, even more so in this case anyway. I think even, you know, the less we tried to force it, the more things just tended to present themselves and make themselves obvious. People do tend to find our records quite difficult, I think. I mean, even the records now that are seen as relatively commercial, you know, Park Life, at the time they came out, they were kind of extremely left field, going against the grain of what everybody else was doing. It'd be very boring if you put out records and people didn't find them difficult, I think. Well, we find them difficult to make, so you're going to find them difficult to listen to. I think it's still too early to say what kind of record any of ours are. I still have trouble listening to Leisure and saying, oh, yeah, and kind of being objective at all about it. You get too emotionally involved in music making, I think. I'm sure it's the same with painting and sculpture and anything else. You invest too much emotional energy in it to ever, certainly for me, to ever be able to talk about it with any kind of objectivity. That's why interviewing me is such a waste of time.
I mean, we're probably the only band that have been putting records out since 1990 who formed around that time, who's survived completely intact. You know, so there must be some kind of good overriding chemistry. I don't know. We had 6 months off as well, so we got out of each other's hair for a bit. You know, because we have been, you know, seeing more of each other than our girlfriends for the last, you know, forever. It's, you know, you go into a studio and see what happens, and the more time you spend doing that, the more adept at it you become. You know, I mean, there's no doubt that throughout the last 10 years we've improved, you know, and it's just surprising to me that more bands don't. Most bands seem to get worse.
I mean, this is not meant to in any way sort of say that we're emulating the Beatles, but you know, if they'd have stayed where they had with even an album like Rubber Soul, which was unbelievable, it would, you know, they wouldn't have been the Beatles. So I think any band, you know, has to replicate, but only the kind of essence. Everything else, you know, and hopefully the essence will come out more and more. You know, and that's certainly what seems to be happening with us. So I think it definitely travels into quite dark recesses, but it's still in kind of one piece at the end, and optimistic. It's weathered, but it's most cathartic thing I've ever done. It's a whole voyage of new things. Life changes. My life's changed, and I'm most definitely broadening my horizons. So this is just this was kind of the catalyst for all of that happening, in a way. The only reason anyone would be mad enough to stay in a band this long and subject themselves to sort of the routines and the timetables and the schedules and everything, as if at the end of everything you've got something which you really feel you can carry for the rest of your life as it's the only reason. I mean, none of us would put up with each other if we weren't satisfying each other's desire to make good work.
I like the idea that we do that in every record, change people's view, but or surprise somebody, because I think when people, it's like we can push it probably more than people can imagine we can, and or maybe we can't. Maybe it all just sounds just like Blur in the end, and it's only very subtle to changes, but to us it's vast. I don't know the difference between anybody else hearing it and me necessarily, but it's definitely not Parklife, and it's definitely not The Great Escape, and it's not Blur. It's gone somewhere. It's slightly askew. It's a bit twisted.
Every interview or every kind of session of interviews after every album, people have been saying, "I think it's a much darker record, this one, much darker." We've been saying that for about 10 years. And as I said to somebody the other day, I've still no idea what that means. I've no idea what people are talking about when they say it's a much darker record. I mean, this one must be bloody invisible if it's darker than the other ones. But I think organic's a good word, because it's another of those that you can say it, and then when the follow-up question arrives, you can pretend that it meant whatever the journalist took it as meaning. I don't know. It is difficult. I think if you could describe albums in one word, there'd be little point in making them. I think if we were to make the same record again now, it would sound different again. It was definitely a process making a record, rather than what people see at the end of the day and what people listen to is kind of isn't all there is. For the band making the record, for us making the record, it's the process that's the interesting thing. It's great to have a record at the end of it, but it'd be just as interesting if you didn't have a record at the end of it, certainly for me. So I think you never want to repeat the process. You've kind of done that now, so you'd never make the same record again. If we were to do it again, we would, even if we were to do the same songs, we'd end up with a vastly different record probably.
There's blood on the tracks. I think it's first time Damon's really sung about himself properly. I thought he'd had singing lessons actually. I think he's singing beautifully, but perhaps that's because he's singing about stuff that's close to his heart. I really don't know what kind of record it is. In a year it'll be obvious, but at the moment it's just this fresh, glistening new thing that nobody knows what it is, like a new chemical element or something. Nobody knows what it is yet or what it can do. It doesn't feel like we were taking a big risk. It feels like a kind of nice, big, elegant piece of work.
The songs I like the most are probably the most subconscious ones, the ones which evolved through very sort of cross purposes and sort of, they were never meant to be the way they are, in a way. Like a song like Battle and Caramel, It really surprised me when I heard them finished.
Yeah, always changing. You know, mellow songs, beautiful.
Caramel, I really like actually, but it's difficult again. I mean, these things change, especially when we start playing things live. The songs change so much from when we've recorded them. I mean, this is another kind of unique album in a way, in that we haven't really played any of these songs live before the recording sessions. And playing songs live does drastically change them over time, especially kind of over the length of the tours we do now, a couple of years. You can imagine, you know, the songs change incrementally every night, and kind of over the space of a couple of years, that makes the song end up as almost a completely different song. So in the past, we've kind of been touring pretty constantly, and adding new songs to the set as they, you know, get written and worked out.
I like 1992. I like the idea of a song that's kind of melancholy, that's kind of dark and melancholy, and then I like this auto-destruct that song sort of has. It's kind of like aliens arrive in a spaceship and kind of halfway through it, and then for the next 4 minutes proceed to kind of slowly destroy the whole song, which is kind of nice. And just because of the memory of actually achieving that was so great. Just because it was achieved by just lots of reverb and echo feeding back on itself on the mixing desk, and it was sort of like William driving the mixing desk like it was a spaceship or something, you know, forcing these horrible sounds out of it, and it was brilliant to see, because his face was a picture, you know, because he was really getting off on this crazy this. It's like building a beautiful domino bridge or the building block house and just kind of destroying it, you know, mischievous. It's kind of that kind of thing.
No, just the bass. I'm the bass player, you know. But it's just, you know, a bass guitar is like a biro. You don't have to be particularly, you know, you don't have to know a lot of words to write a good story. You know, having a good vocabulary doesn't make you a great writer. Truman Capote didn't know his alphabet, allegedly. You know, but if you've got something good to say and some kind of means of expressing it, whether it's with, you know, a guitar or a paintbrush or a typewriter, or that's where it all starts. You know, you're trying to get something that's inside you outside. Yeah, it's almost 10 years to the day that we had our first rehearsal and did She's So High. Yeah, I mean, it feels like 100 sometimes, and sometimes it feels like 10 minutes, you know. It's always like that though, isn't it?
It felt very healthy for me doing that, because it kind of closed the door on a period of life and got it away, you know, and it gave it to somebody else, made it public property, you know, whether anybody wanted it particularly or not. I mean, it wasn't my chip on my shoulder anymore, so I got rid of that. So that left me pretty much free and relaxed and ready to go on something, because I didn't want it interfering, and I made it quite clear to Damon that anything he thought on the record could be used with Blur, then it could be used, but he just seemed to just want to let me get on with it. Didn't like any of the stuff. No, but I think he kind of liked a couple of the things, but I think he was just leaving me to do something, to see what happened, and I think he was quite interested in what I come up with.
Yeah, I definitely feel different, you know, feel very different to how I did 10 years ago. I look back at 10 years ago and think, what an idiot. What kind of an idiot was that? So probably in another 10 years I'll be looking back to today and going, what the hell was I on about? What an idiot. Yeah, my granny on her deathbed said she still felt the same person as she did when she was 16. Today I don't feel that, no. I feel like I've wasted my youth in a pop group, yes. there's a billion things I want to do, and I can't, with 24 hours in the day, I can't even begin to scratch the surface of them. So, apart from being in Blur, I fly planes, as you know. I animate. I do taekwondo. And as many other things as I can possibly fit into the day, I do. And I think to do it, I've managed to do 3 or 4 of those things quite well, so which I think is pretty good average, really. So for the moment, I'm sticking with that. Playing pontoon, I've got an 18, which is all right, so I'm going to stick. I did when we kind of had a few months off. Well, probably the best part of 6 months off this year, and I kind of wrote out a list of everything I wanted to do, and I ended up with two sides of A4. And my wife's going, I don't know, I hate to break this to you, but you're not actually going to be able to do all that in 6 months. I went, what? 6 months is forever. Of course I will. But yes, about a good, I want to play a lot. I want to play jazz. I spent my entire childhood playing jazz. I've got to do it again. So that's something I definitely will be doing. But if you could have a word with God and add an extra 6 hours into every day.
Well, they have to be, if they're going to sort of stick with us, they have to be pretty, as you say, open-minded. People generally are, I think. I think it's such a fallacy that people listen to one kind of music. It's really strange the way that, the way music is got across to people is so sort of segregated still. Well, I'm listening to a lot of Latin music at the moment, and a bit of jazz, and got a great double CD called The Lyricist Lounge, which is really nice, spoken hip hop. Yeah, and classical music because of the film. Getting into Charles Ives.
Yeah, I don't want to tour anymore, and that's it, really. I don't want to go on the road, because there's more to life than that. I want to play shows, but I don't want to go on the road. This is so ridiculous, because I always remember this South Bank show with Peter Townsend when he was saying quite similar things, and then he wrote this new batch of stuff around White City, and then he's off on the road again and enjoying every minute of it. But right now, no. I like playing. I don't like being told what to do and being forced into situations I don't like. So, like anybody, I guess. So, I like playing to feel good, not like a chore. Then I think that makes sense for me.
Yeah, I'll still do some bits and pieces, I should think, over the next couple of years, but certainly we're not going to do the same kind of slog around the world as we've been doing for the past 10 years. I think if when Star Trek becomes a reality and you can actually beam yourself to places, and appear in little sparkles of light, and kind of walk on stage, hello, where are we? Hello, Jupiter. Then that'll be a different matter. But it's the kind of all the mechanics of touring, spending half your life in airport lounges, and it's just, that kind of thing starts to feel like a slog after 10 years. The gigs still feel absolutely amazing.
Hello, this is Graham Coxon from Blur. Thank you very much for listening and everything like that. Cheers, bye.
Hello, I'm Alex from Out of Blur, and I play the bass guitar all the doodah day. Thanks very much for listening. Cheers. Hello, my name's Alex, and I can play the bass guitar all the doodah day. Thanks very much for listening. Cheers.
Hi, this is Dave from Blur. Thanks for listening. Goodbye.
This is Damon Albarn from the band Blur, and thank you very much for listening. Goodbye.